The Big D, WDRC, remembers the way it used to be.
You know, there's been so many people that have been on the air at DRC. I grew up with a lot of them. And the one thing is there's always a different kind of variety of the people that were hired there. And it seemed like a lot of the people that came to DRC, a lot of the talent, a lot of the DJs, they left their mark, let's say. And some of them, I think, were carried out by the police. But our next guest needs no introduction. No. Sebastian's on the line. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Now, tell me a little bit, Sebastian, as far as go back in time, because I know you did, 2 or 3 different trips over to the Big D, didn't you? 2,
81 to 82, and 85 to 86.
And how did they end up? What happened in between those 2 times?
Well, the first time was kind of took me by surprise because I was working in Naugatuck and at WNVR, a Joe McCoy program station. And before that, DRC primarily was a voice-inflected type of station. Everybody had to have this certain sound to really have Charlie get in touch with them.
Yep.
And I did not fit the mold of that. So I was kind of shocked when Charlie actually called me to say come up for an interview, and at that point in time they were starting to drift a little bit more towards personality-oriented radio. And not to say that the guys with the big voices didn't have personalities before, but they seemed to be looking to get DJs that could spend a little bit more time talking in between songs, unlike the way they used to do back in the 60s and early 70s.
Well, you know, it's interesting because everybody had their own little, like maybe some quirks. And what was it? I understand that you kind of developed a different personality between when you were there 81 to 82 and when you came back in 85. So we know 85, there was actually, from what I remember, I think there was a little disclaimer on the show that I think it was supposed to be 18 and older. Is that right? Is that what they did back then?
Yeah, I think the disclaimer said something to the effect of the opinions that are going to be heard in the next 4 or 5 hours are strictly the opinions of the talent and have nothing to do with management or sponsors of DRC. And so that kind of cleared them from some of the provocative stuff that I did on the air at that time.
Well, you know, you always like to walk to the edge, and I do remember in 81 and 82, when there was a parting of the ways, you had a tendency to see how far you could go. Did you go too far back then? And what happened where you had to take a little break for 4 years?
No, I don't think so. I think I lost a couple of sponsors. And
I guess we don't have air checks of those when that happened, but
no, that's what kind of pushed me out the door. But there was some shoe store that was a client, and I said that they were located in the Lily White section of Bloomfield.
Oh boy,
which didn't take well, and I didn't even know the black-white makeup of that town at the time because I was from a different part of the state. But I think the bigger one that got me in trouble was Highlight.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't remember the exact saying, but I kind of implied that Highlight might have been a little bit on the crooked side. And
yeah, something about I think I recall something about the guys that are out on parole or whatever you said.
Yeah, that didn't sit well with Buddy Berenson.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But we come to find out full circle many years later, if you watched any of the Whitey Bulger movies or read the book Black Mass, that there was quite a bit of corruption going on at Hartford Highlight and skimming and everything else. So I guess what I said at the time was probably a lot more true than most people recognized when I made the remark.
Okay, so what was, after you kind of stirred the waters a few times, what did you do during that period when you weren't at DRC? Were you on another station until 85? How'd that go?
I went to TIC FM part-time, and I had a unique voice and a unique style. And the thing that really fried me going to TIC FM is that the program director there changed my name to Bob Lewis, thinking that nobody would know who I was because he didn't want to have anybody from another station cross over for whatever reason. And everybody knew who I was, even though I had to use that name. And I just worked there part-time for a while, and then really launched my big talk show career in 1988 when I went to CCC for the 9th different time. And that's when I think things got really off the ground. And I really became a talk show host because when I got hired in July of '88 at CCC, they were pretty progressive FM rock, and I didn't like the music at all. So I started talking a lot more in between songs just so I didn't have to hear the stuff that I had to play. And it wasn't for any other reason. And then it kind of got natural for me to spend much more time talking and taking phone calls. And I made some remarks on the air that I have to play records that I really didn't want to. And listeners pretty much said, don't play any music. We would rather hear you talk. And then it just became Sebastian in the morning from 6 to 10 without any music whatsoever. And then they went to progressive rock or classic rock from 10 o'clock on.
Yeah, I know it was. It's like what you say, really, Sebastian. It's that voice. You know, you can't. You can, no matter how many times they want to change your name. And someone said that to me one time. They said, "Oh well, you know, you could work over there, and you can work over at that station, and just change your name." But the listeners can kind of catch on with that. My voice is not as unique as yours. But going back to DRC for round 2, I know you really, when you did push the limit there and really got things going, they were more or less at that particular, because my dad was out of there, and they were kind of brought you back to really kind of stir that water and get some sort of controversy going. And you had, I think that's when you had Diane Novak with you, and
yes.
The two of you were an amazing team, but she was almost like the one that would keep pulling you back in line. The farther you went over the edge, she'd pull you back.
She was doing traffic at the time.
Yep.
When I first started there, and I really liked how she contributed, and I thought she would be a good on-air partner. And Fred Horton, I think, was the program director at the time, and he just moved her from traffic into the afternoon slot with me, and we did that pretty successfully for a couple of years. Yeah,
it was a good 1-2 punch, and I think so that was just a little bit something that added a little bit of a a little bit more of a twist to the show. And then throughout the rest of your career, because I know you did CCC and then you moved on to other things, did you always have a co-host with you after that, or what did you have at CCC?
Pretty much, yeah. I had Mary Scanlon work for me at CCC one of the final times around early 2000, and she was terrific. One of the best on-air partners that I had. And the reason for it is pretty simple. Other than Rush Limbaugh, I can't think of any talent that sounded better alone than having other people in there with them. I mean, this goes to, any radio personality worth his salt is always better when he has people to play off or have conversational radio so that you're talking to someone and not at someone. You could even tell in sportscasting today, and I'm a big Mets fan, and the old-timers seem to think that when Ralph Kiner and Lindsey Nelson and Bob Murphy were doing the games, they were great, but they talked at the audience. They never had chemistry. And when you put Gary Cohen in there now and Keith Hernandez and Ron Darling, it's such a smooth listen. And this is what I aspired to do when I was doing talk radio, is just have other people in there with me. So it sounded like people were just listening in and enjoying themselves. Whereas it's very hard to do that when one person is on the air alone. It just gets stale real quick.
Yeah, and I've always seen that, even guys that were on alone and never had anybody else on the show with them. A big thing had to do with back then when you all had, producers or engineers playing, the commercials and stuff. At least, you could keep that one-on-one with that particular person. Even if they weren't contributing that much to the show, And I think, like, even now, one of the things that I found, Facebook has been great. And Facebook is great because you never really know who's out there, if your friends are listening, or what's going on when you're doing radio, or if anybody's listening. But I found that as soon as that element came in, and again, you can't play to that, but because most people aren't, on Facebook at that point. But it gives you at least it gives you that feeling of, like, when you see, whether you see Sharon or you see somebody on Facebook, at least a comment from them. I think that is a big difference now. And then now, how many years at CCC, and how long was it until you got over to 93.7, and that went through a few different formats?
Well, I was at CCC from 88 to 95, and of course that's when I did the infamous Berate the Bride.
Oh, that was CCC?
Yeah, that was CCC. I did it primarily. I did it at DRC a couple of times without getting into too much hot water, but it really developed its own. It took on a show of its own in 88, 89 when I did it at CCC, until we finally got sued, and then we had to stop it. And we got sued by a woman who did not like the fact that she was called the Dog of the Week, and she was an IRS agent in Hartford.
Oh, that's a smooth move.
And I ended up getting audited a couple of times, coincidentally, as a result of that. But she sued for defamation and slander, and the Kennedy lawyers in Boston actually got wind of this and wanted to defend me pro bono, but Cy Dressner, the owner, would have nothing of it. And he said, no, I'm just going to pay her X amount of dollars to make the thing go away. I said, any publicity would be good publicity. He disagreed. So he paid her X amount of dollars in a non-disclosure. I can say now it was $20,000, which was a lot of money back in 89 or 90. Mm-hmm. And then, or I guess it was 94. And then about 2 weeks later, my paycheck was reduced by $200. And when I went to sign, I said, why is my paycheck short? He said, well, you have to pay the $20,000 that I fronted to pay this woman to go away. And that's when I decided that I'm not staying around any longer. And that's about the time when I got the offer to go to 93.7, and I got a $40,000 or $50,000 pay raise to jump ship to go from CCC to ZMX at that time.
Now, so throughout your career, where was your first on-air job? If we were to go back to that, and I think after 93.7, you had quite a few years there. But when it first started, what was it that got you as a kid? I mean, what did you listen to?
I think listening to New York City radio growing up on Long Island, I was always fascinated by the Dan Ingrams of the world, and then when I went to college and majored in communications and went on to college radio, I just took to it like a fish takes to water, and that's when I started. I got my first commercial job in the summer of '68 in Wisconsin, just to get some commercial experience. Went back to Long Island at WGBB, where I was working prior to that, and then came to Connecticut in 1970 because Long Island didn't have any full-time openings, and I worked for WWCO in Waterbury, who was owned by Larry Ripken's father, Wally King.
Yep.
And worked there for a while. Went to Troy, New York quickly. It snowed every day for 30 days. I came back to Hartford and worked in, I guess, 72 at CCC. Went to New Haven at WABZ. Went to CCC again. And that's pretty much it. And until the last time at CCC had different ownership. And it was a lot smoother ride working for Boyd Arnold than it did for Cy.
So your personality all the way through was always leaning heavy into personality and talking a lot more and having that untraditional approach?
Yes, yeah. I mean, to be as candid as possible. I mean, it was just one of those things where I would observe life every day from 10 o'clock in the morning and just kind of make mental notes of what was going on in my world. and then just brought back that on the air the following morning at 6, and just winged it. Pretty much took some notes, and I had a cheat sheet for about 20 minutes before 6 o'clock, and had 5 or 6 or 7 different topics that I thought I could milk for 3 or 4 hours, and it became a pretty successful run.
Well, I tell you, it was so strange when you were. I kind of listened to you throughout the years. What was, other than the fact that you got a little bit more risque and a little bit more blue? What was the early Sebastian at DRC like in the early '80s versus going up to '85? Did you automatically start edgy, or did you work towards that because of the feedback you got?
I wasn't really edgy in '81, '82. I was kind of more cornball material. I had purchased some bits from different comedy stores and things of that nature. But, looking back on that, I didn't really think it was all that great radio. It just was, it was just a little different to do at the time, because DRC's heritage was pretty much heavily music oriented, and they didn't really have people going into that would walk the line in any way, shape, or form. And I just thought, well, this is what I want to do. And if it takes me to the unemployment line eventually, that's okay too. I'd rather be true to myself than everybody else.
Yeah, and as I was saying before, you did end up at 93.7, and they went through some format changes, and you managed to. I know that they paid hefty to bring you over there, and you had quite a following there. So that was pretty much your. Was that your last stop in traditional radio, or?
No. That was the most the highest paid place. That's for sure. And they actually, in '98, I was there from May '95 or February '95 to May of '98, and in '98 is when they went urban to the present format that it is now, and thought that I was not going to be a fit for that, so they let me go. But they paid me a year's salary not to go work for anybody else. And during that time, when I had the non-compete, I launched my Sebastian Sports website and started selling my picks on football winners and baseball winners and so forth. I still do that to this day. And then got the final run, back to CCC in early 2000 until about 2008.
Now, when you look at all the stuff that's out there now, Sebastian, as far as, there's all kinds of opportunities, but maybe not really for live talent anymore. So it's like, if you can cram a 5-hour show into an hour-long, voice track or whatever, it seems to be so different now. What do you think when you take a look at it? Is there still room in there? I mean, you're amazing with sports. I mean, where's it at?
I don't think so. I still have people that, to this day say, "Oh, you should be on the air. You should, why aren't you doing this?" And I simply say, "Well, you find me the spot, and I'll consider it." And it's just become so company driven, where you don't have the mom and pop stations the way you used to. I mean, CCC and DRC both kind of flourished for so many years because they didn't have 18 million cooks trying to spoil the pudding. You had a program director and a general manager, and that's pretty much it. Nowadays, you have Clear Channel, and they changed their name to this, and it's iHeart and Odyssey and Entercom, and all of these big conglomerates run 10, 15 different stations, and it's just hard for anybody to have any identity without having to answer to 15 different people, and it's just not the same as it used to be.
All right, so let's just say if tomorrow you came back into it, what kind of radio would you want to be doing now? If we weren't in the scene that we're up to now, what would Sebastian today be doing if all of a sudden you were back, in a really a substantial market? What would your gig be?
I think it would pretty much. I don't think I would miss a beat, and I don't think it would be any different than it was the day I left in 2008. It would just pick up right from there. Not heavy into politics, which I think is one of the worst mistakes that people make, because it's just, you can be the smartest person in the world, and if you start talking politics, you're going to alienate half your audience. It's the same as when you go to a concert
and so you pay money to see Barbara Streisand or something like that, and she'll spend 10 minutes talking about why Trump is no good and this, that, and the other thing. And I just never could quite understand the political bent as far as having an arena be successful on radio. Because if you're a Republican, then and you talk Republican radio or right-wing stuff, then you're only going to have right-wing people listen. And if you have the liberal standpoint, then you're going to only have liberals listening to you. And nobody wants to listen to radio if everybody agrees on everything. And that's the problem with politics on the radio. Whether you're right-wing or left-wing, it just becomes a mass of bunch of people that are all agreeing with each other and patting each other on the back. If you take out politics and just talk about life, and have opinions on subjects other than political, you're going to get a lot of people that agree with you for one thing, and you're going to get a lot of people that disagree with you. Just like it's great to talk sports, because for every Red Sox fan, there's a Red Sox hater who roots for the Yankees, and that's what keeps talk radio at its height, is when people disagree with each other and can argue and still pat each other on the back at the end of the day and say, see you tomorrow.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that I haven't heard anybody in years doing like the point and counterpoint, because it really, I think you would really draw in, because both sides are pulling for somebody, and right now all I'm seeing out there is right wing, and I from what you're saying, I think what maybe talk became so popular when Rush Limbaugh got involved was because Rush clearly was an entertainer, and he'd right away say that he was a DJ. He was always the one that was kind of laughing harder than anybody else when he'd come up with all these things. But when that breeds hate radio, and when that breeds people that just want to fight, and you get the same 10 callers every day.
Well, that's like Michael Savage type of radio. When he was on. Now I guess he's gone from DRC and his network into podcasting, and that's just a whole different arena. And there's just so many different platforms out there that you can listen to either via online or the radio, that it's hard for anybody to carve a niche big enough to have a substantial audience, because there's just so many choices now. That's why network television is dying. I don't watch network television at all unless I want to see local news, because your choices on Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime and everything else are so diverse that you can find much greater entertaining television by staying away from your old 3, 8, and 30, as you will.
All right, so I'll let you get out of here, but one last thing, because it is the 100 years of WDRC. When you look at both go-rounds there and everything else, how would you how do you feel about your overall experience at the time you were at Big D?
I look back at it and say I had not hit my stride yet, and it just happened to be I was on my way, so to speak, but I didn't really hit my peak until I left there and probably hit CCC in '88. That's when I really started to develop the niche without playing music, and that's when my whole personality developed. It was just in its infancy stage back at DRC, because there was still so much music being played that I wasn't able to showcase what I really wanted to do.
And you have mastered doing a full hour of doing that and a full show of doing that. I think a lot of the people out there doing talk radio would probably be a lot better if they had maybe 6 or 8 records an hour, because if they don't have the stamina, they don't have the creativity. At least from what I hear from what you're saying, it's hard to pull off a show without really having done your homework and having that creativity and interesting slant. I mean,
that's true, but there's still a lot of programmers who, and I've heard a lot of good talent in Florida, where I live in the winter, where talk show hosts have been instructed to cut back on the talk, and they still want them to play music. I mean, a good friend of mine, Brother Weeze, who's dominated the Rochester airwaves for years, has now been forced to play a couple of songs an hour. There's another guy in Fort Lauderdale that's done talk radio on an FM rock station for so long, very successful. Castronovo, and they've asked him to now start playing records in between his comments, and it just really takes away from the impact of the talent levels that these people have.
Yeah, I can see that too. It comes down to there's no one market that's necessarily the same as another market. And
That's true.
You know, and being able to wear all the hats that you've worn in Hartford, especially through all these years. And I know, I mean, it was always your personality, and it's unfortunate that, you know, people don't necessarily, you know, when there's a format change, sometimes they're afraid even to stay with the same talent. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe you would have been all right on the hip hop station, still doing a morning show the way you did, because it doesn't mean they're not going to stay for the whole show, for the whole day. But
That's for sure.
I know all the time, Sebastian, they always ask me, whatever happened to him? And I just say, he's still doing time. We're hoping he gets out soon. No, you know, and I want to point out, if you haven't had a chance, you know, follow Sebastian's band. Sebastian and the Hitmen, is that what you're going by now?
Yes, we play roughly 5 or 6 times every summer at Water's Edge, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and check him out on Facebook, because Sebastian is always there. And if you've got the hankering and you know somebody, I know Sebastian's always open to listen to any kind of new ideas or anything else. And he's been pretty good about staying true to the Connecticut area, and also always great to see it's something with the Connecticut radio reunions, and especially you're just another Big D brother. And I thank you so much for taking a few minutes with us today.
Very good, and you know, if it was not for your father, I probably never would have gone as far in this business I did. He gave me the big opportunity to test the waters, and I'll be forever grateful to him.
Well, I appreciate that, Sebastian, because I know when he hired you, he saw a talent, and when he sees a talent, he encourages that talent to keep moving. And you know, just what you're saying, he didn't try to change you; he brought you in to do what you do, and then take it from there. But I'm sure we haven't heard the last of you between your band and between who knows what you'll do on the airwaves. And go ahead, as long as you're here, if people want to catch up to you online with all the sports stuff you're doing now, what's that?
SebastianSports.com is my website, and I've become a pretty good handicapper over the years, and I'm like a stockbroker for people that like to bet on games. I finished in the top 15% of all the contestants in a Las Vegas football contest last year, and it'd be worth your while to check out the website.
All right, thanks a lot, man, and we'll be looking for you out on the circuit. And I'll tell you, if you haven't heard him with the singing voice, it's a whole nother Sebastian. However, the other one's still down deep inside. I've seen him on Facebook. Take it easy,
Thanks,
man.
Steve.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Hey, what can I say? Sebastian has always stayed true to himself and has always pushed the limit, and he's never changed that. And it's great to hear that that's what he's always been about. And I'm glad he hasn't changed, because the really good ones, they stay true to themselves, and Sebastian's done that. Thanks again, Sebastian.
Right here on WDRC.